So you want to reverse engineer a 3D scan into a clean 3D printable solid object. In this video we're going to do just that with plasticity. Hello and welcome to Take Refuge 3D with me, Peter. Welcome back, and if you're new here then welcome. Over the last couple of years I've had quite a few requests for doing a video using plasticity to reverse engineer an object from 3D scanned data. I did do one a couple of years ago using photogrammetry data, but it was quite a simplistic tutorial. In this video we'll look at the scanned sprocket and use basic tools to build up our shape until we have a nice clean result. Now I want to give a really big shout out to Matt from the channel Learn Everything About Design, who supplied me with this 3D scan of a sprocket for me to use in this video. Now on his channel he does videos on fusion, plasticity and much more, including reviewing hardware like 3D scanners, as well as more complex reverse engineering videos than this one. I'll link one of those videos below if that's interesting to you. Now in this video we'll focus on just the reverse engineering aspect of this process, and in the description below you can find a plasticity file with a pre-aligned 3D scan which you can follow along with. And just before we crack into it, if you are brand new to plasticity, you can get 30 days free trial from the plasticity.xyz website, and then you can follow along with my Learn Plasticity from Zero video to take your very first steps in learning the plasticity interface and modeling. And after that, if you love it like I do, you can use my code REFUGE10 at checkout to get a 10% discount of either the Indie or Studio license. Now let's get into it. So this is the sprocket. Now this is an STL mesh file. So this is basically polygons, and if we zoom in we can see that it's fairly low poly. So this was originally quite a high poly object, and this has been reduced down to around about 2% of its original density. Okay, and that's just going to make things a little bit easier for us. The shapes are all the same, with a little bit of loss of detail, which for this object is not that important. In fact, could be to our advantage. Second of all, I want to say that this has been pre-aligned. So if you download it, it's pre-aligned. Now, if we turn our curves on, I'll just explain briefly how I aligned it, because when you come into plasticity and you've got an object that's been scanned, it might often be like on a weird angle. So what I did is I aligned it until it was pretty much the bottom was straight with this red line in front mode, and then in top mode I got it as close to the center as I possibly could. And then just turning off the sprocket for a second, I made a square with these 4 lines at a 45-degree angle from each corner. And if we'll turn the sprocket back on, you can see that those lines, as best as I could, line up to the wall of this central hole. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. Okay, so we're going to use this square as our point of rotation. It might be a little bit offset from the center, so we're going to use this square usually, but this is fairly well aligned. Alignment's pretty much an art form on its own. There's a few ways that you can go about it, but let me know in the comments if you want me to do a video on how to align a 3D scan, because you can do it in plasticity or you can do it in another software like Blender. Okay, so what we're going to do first of all is we're just going to try and build up these curves out here to begin with, and then we will go on to the interior afterwards. Okay, so first of all, I've got screencast keys down in the bottom right, so if you would like to follow along you can with that. And if you feel like I'm going too quickly and you want to pause or rewind, feel free to do that. That's how we learn. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my matte cap from this default matte cap, right, in top mode. If we just change that to that, we can see the facets a little bit easier. So any matte cap which is going to show you the facets more is going to be useful. So you can even use potentially custom matte caps. In this case, I'm going to use this one. Okay. And as you can see that there's these facets. Now, if I click on the spline curve over here and I just hover over things, you'll notice that it's going to snap to either the vertex or the face. So I really want just roughly, if we see, I want this top to come around this top edge here. Okay. So if we start from here, doesn't really matter if it's on a vertex or a face. And we want to just orbit as we're going to make sure that it's landing where it should. Okay. And I think that should be fairly good. Now, the reason I wanted to orbit around, so if I just did this in top mode and an orthographic view, and I use a spline curve here, and I just do something similar, what you'll notice is that it's doing this face, comma, XY. And if I approve that, you'll see that it has followed where the faces and the vertices actually are, but it's not snapped to the mesh. So using a non-orthographic mode and orbiting as you go, you're going to get it snapped to the mesh much easier. Now I'm going to press 1 on the numpad to go into front mode. And I feel like I might have come a little bit too far with this one. So I'm just going to delete it. And this is just a good opportunity to start again. And I'm following, once again, this top of the chamfer here. Okay. And I think to about here should be good. One more time, just for good measure. Maybe you want to bring it down to the middle of that chamfer. Okay, and I'm just going to confirm that. I think that looks okay. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to go into front mode. And I can see that it's not quite where I want it to be. So I'm going to press 1. I'm just going to G. I'm going to align that. I'm going to align that. Come into top mode. G, and I'm going to align that. And I think that follows that curve quite nicely. You can get quite, particular about this if you're really wanting to replicate the object identically. In this tutorial, for the sake of speed, we won't. Now what I've just done, I'll just take a step back. I've gone into front mode and I've taken a corner rectangle and I'm just trying to cover this kind of face area here. And the reason I want to do that is I've got a plane here. We can bring it out. I can shift and spacebar to create that as the temporary construction plane. And then I can mirror this along there. And you'll see that that's fairly well aligned with that. Although it is going into the object a little bit. So we'll just go into 1 and we'll G. We'll pull these ones down a bit till it's just outside. And then we can mirror those two across to the other side. And they are fairly well aligned. Like I said, we're not going to get too particular. I'm just pressing H to hide that curve. Okay. And I can select these two and I can go Shift B and select this end vertex and this end vertex there. And it will automatically create a G2 bridge curve. You can tab through to get a G3 or a G0 or a G1. And I think a G2 will be good in this case. And we want to bring this out. And flatten that in a little bit. And I think that will be fine. Okay, and we can do the same with the bottom. Shift B, this one here. We can press Control and 7 to look at it from below. And we just want to do the exact same as what we did there. I'm not going to be too particular about how we do this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to now loft that together. Now, if we hide our sprocket, we can see that that loft is going like that. Well, let's take a step back, and before we loft it, okay, so before we loft anything, what we're actually going to do is we're going to select all of these curves that we've just made, and we're going to do a radial array down here. Okay, so we're going to go into top mode, and we're going to choose the center of this square as our radial array. And we're going to change this number here to 16 because that's how many is on the sprocket. And you'll see it's not perfectly aligned, but that doesn't matter too much because this object is not perfectly aligned. We could have spent hours perfectly aligning everything, but in our case, that's not what we're doing. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to bridge, once again, these two here. And we can turn off our mesh, and we're going to just bridge these two here. Okay. And then if we turn our mesh back on, we can see that that fairly well lines up. You can tweak it if you like. It's a G2, so it's got good continuity, and we can do the same down the bottom. And that one's not so well aligned, but if we pull it out like that, we've got like that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to loft these two. Oh, well, no, we're going to loft this one. Okay. And we're going to turn this off. We're going to turn this matte cap back on so we can see what's going on a bit better. And we're going to loft this too, and then we're going to hold down shift, and we're going to use that edge there to make that a G2. Okay. And we're going to do the same here. Loft, hold down shift, choose that edge, and tab to make a G2. And then we're going to do the same here and G2. Okay, now we should be able to select all of these and press J. We can hide all of our curves except for the alignment ones. We can turn our sprocket back on, and we can choose this loft. Okay, and we should be able to rotate that around to 16. Okay, I'm just going to lock the sprocket so we can't select it. Press 4, and I'm going to J to join all of those together. Okay, and now we can hide our sprocket again, and this is what we should have. Now, I'm going to try and run the patch command, and that has created a perfect patch. Now you can tab through, and that's going to fail. If we use Xnerbs, it might be a little bit more forgiving, but in this case, not really. So I'm going to use patch because it doesn't seem like Xnerbs or patch has any difference. Okay. Okay, so we've got all of our curves hidden, and we've got this object here. Okay, so what we really want to do is, just because these might be a little bit off, I just want to create a face that starts there and ends there. And I'm going to make that my construction plane. And then let's try and mirror that across the bottom. And as we go around, just make sure that it's not like out of alignment, which it doesn't seem to be. And then we can press Q to make that a Boolean. And right click to accept. Make sure that the Boolean actually worked. Okay, now we can get rid of that. And if there's any redundant topology, we can go delete redundant topology. Okay, so now we've got our object. Now if you turn on a, that looks pretty good to me. So let's get into getting the rest of the mesh done. So let's turn our sprocket back on. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to take out this solid and we're just going to lock it so we can't touch it for now. And we're going to unlock, well, no, we're not. We're going to turn our alignment curves on, Alt-Z. Okay, and we're just going to take a circle, okay, and we're going to bring that to the edge of this bottom chamfer, okay, and we'll pull it up, GZ, till we can see it. And then we're going to duplicate it, Shift D, and that didn't work, Shift D, scale, and do the same with this guy here. We're going to take this guy, we're going to bring it up, Tab, to make sure it's coming down the way as well. Grab the bottom of it, pull the bottom of it down till it's hitting that. I'm going to choose this and I'm going to do an ISO param. Press Tab to make it go vertical. And hold down Shift just to slow it down a bit. We can bring that in just a teensy bit. And pull this down. Do another ISO param there. And bring that in like so. Okay, so now we've got that going through the center. And there seems to be some kind of solid in there. Oh, that's this guy here. So what we really want to do is grab this. And we want to turn our solid back on up the top. Unlock it. And we want to press Q and Q to make that hole in the middle. Then we can choose these two, Q, Q, until they're joined together. Okay, and now the only part left is we've got these sort of teeth in the middle. So I'm going to hide this curve here and this curve here. Okay, and we'll keep our middle curve. Actually, we can turn these ones off, I think. So we'll just hide all of those as well. Okay, so we've got these kind of teeth in between. So how we're going to deal with that is really easily is we're just going to take a cube in the center. We'll make it a center cube. Okay. And I'm going to scale that by pressing SZ on the Z axis. And I'm going to bring that into here approximately. And we'll just make it a little bit away from the actual edge. And we can bring this down until it hits the top. And we can press G and drag it down on the Z. Bring this in till it hits the side. Choose this edge, G, and bring it out on the side. Choose this edge, G, bring it in on the side. Okay. We can choose that as a temporary plane. And that might be a little bit big, so we can scale that on there. Bring it a little bit to the left so it's aligned. Now if we turn our sprocket off down here, we can actually just bring this away. And I can select this back face here by pressing 3. We can just drag this a little bit and hit the center of that, and it's going to go into the center of that. And I think this front face, let's just turn our sprocket back on. we'll bring this up to the base of there. Make that a temporary plane. Alt X. And we can just 2. Select just those edges. We should be able to select just this face and press G and pull it up. Union these two sides together. And we can play with this. G and pull this down. G and pull this to the left. And I think, without doing too much more work on it, that's pretty good. Okay, so I don't know if it's got the same amount, so we'll just count them, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So this actually has 14. So we'll turn our alignment square back on. Press 7, select that one, and we'll rotate it around this. Okay, it's not quite right because it's got 16. So we want to just Control Z, rotate it around this. Hold down Shift before we confirm. And it's not going to be quite right, but we can try and rotate. For this purpose, it's close enough. So what we'll do, we'll turn this alignment thing off again. We're going to press 1, 2, sorry, and we're just going to select all of these. Turn our sprocket off, and we can give them a bevel like that. Do our radial array. Q, Q, and Q. And that should join together. Let's find out by pressing 4. Yep, that's all joined in on the edge there. So finally, we'll turn our alignment guy off. Okay, we'll turn our sprocket back on, just as a guide. So we can either chamfer or bevel these edges. All right, I'm going to hit B. And I think 0.0035 might be a good amount. Let's turn our sprocket off. Maybe 0.004 in this case. And we can try for a G2. And down below, I didn't realize that we had this, so we can just get rid of that. And then we can choose all of these edges, and we can give them the same. Actually, let's pull this down a little bit. Choose all of these edges here. That's not working, so I'm going to pull that down and I'm going to hit that. And that got rid of that. Okay, so final step, just to doing a little bit of cleanup there. We'll take all of these edges and we can give them the same fillet. What was it? 0.004. In this case, maybe a little bit bigger, 0.006. And then we can do this one here, and we can just match it to that by clicking the other bevel. And then let's get rid of our temporary plane. And then we've got our sprocket. I'm going to unlock this other guy. We'll select it. And look at them both. We can turn another matte cap on. And then we've got a reverse engineered sprocket. I know my one's not identical, but for the sake of keeping this tutorial pretty good, I even think we got the chamfer the right size, or the bevel the right size there. I think that looks great. It looks like the sprocket we did. We could even go into rendered mode and choose a different environment and see what it looks like in rendered mode. I think that looks cool. So just adding final little details here. Adding a fillet to these, right, to give that little extra bit of oomph to it. You can see here that there is, you know, if we look at it from a matte cap, you can see here that there's some kind of like where we mirrored it. There's some dirty lines. So if you wanted to really go in, and you could go in and you could, you know, X-NURBS these bits in one by one, and, you know, rejoin them to the main body, right? And you could do that. You could go around and you could carefully, one by one, go and fix all of this up. And I think that looks quite nice now. So, you know, that would be up to you whether you wanted to do that or not. But I think just for a beginner's tutorial to sort of reverse engineering, we use basic tools only, you know, and it came out looking quite good. And then if we look at our mesh, GX, it's quite similar. So we've got, this is our clean version, and this is the original mesh, which is the sort of dirty mesh version. So anyway, hope that was helpful to somebody, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Tschüss!